What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to our real estate and construction channel down here in the beautiful state of Texas. We are in Houston, Texas, and we are joined by Luis Lopez. How you doing, Luis?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm trying to stay cool. At least these past, I don't know what it is. These past few days have been a scorcher down here.
That's right.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Luis. I know we chatted a bit, the other day, and it was great to connect with you. And I'm really looking forward to having you on the show today.
Likewise, man. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, Luis. So for those of us who aren't too familiar with you, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, absolutely. So I was born in San Luis Potosi, Mexico. I have 7 brothers and sisters. So there's 8 of us total. And so we grew up a little rough, right? Grew up in Beaumont, Texas, moved here at a young age, grew up working in a blueberry farm out there in Beaumont, and decided to stay home, went to Lamar University, earned my bachelor's and master's in accounting there. Graduated, came to work for Deloitte here in Houston. So that's how I ended up here. About 6 years ago, I acquired a farmers insurance agency. I still own and operate that company. And then in August of 2020, bought an accounting firm. So a little risky, right? Decided to acquire a business in the middle of a pandemic, a lot of uncertainty at that time, but hey, high risk, high reward, right? If there's anything I learned from college or business at Lamar University is you got to take that risk.
Yeah, ain't that the case? No, and that's so interesting as well. Did you say you had 7 or 8 brothers and sisters?
7. I have 7 siblings, so I make 8.
Okay, wow. I'm curious, how many boys and then how many girls?
We're right down the middle, so 4 men, 4 women.
Wow, how about that? And I'm curious as well, because I personally don't know many people that I've met throughout my life that have had that many siblings. What's that dynamic like in the house?
Oh man, it's fun. It's fun. You never have you never lack someone to speak to, right? And if no one wants to speak with you, it's because you really messed up. You really made a big mistake, right? If all 10 people in the house are ignoring you, that's a real problem. But we grew up in a very, very small home and 1 bathroom. My 3 older brothers and I shared a room. My sisters shared a room, and then my parents had their room, and we had 1 bathroom. So in the morning, getting up, going to school was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, it sounds like you're I don't know, you're someone's having to keep it organized, whether it's the older sibling. I'm really not sure.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's funny. No, I like that. That's neat. And and I'm curious, I know that you mentioned how, you grew up in Mexico, coming here, to live in Beaumont, growing up in Beaumont, going to school in Beaumont. I'm curious why, what do you like about the Houston area? Why not go somewhere else? What's special to you about Houston?
I love the opportunity. I love the opportunity, right? Houston is always, it's growing. It won't stop growing, right? Um, the suburbs are continuing to develop, right? We're going further south, further west. I mean, the development is here, right? People are flying into Texas, right? Flying into Austin, moving to Houston. There's just so much opportunity, and I'm so close to home, right? This is the closest big city to Beaumont, right? So it made sense for me, you know. Plus, Deloitte made me an offer to come to Houston. If they would have said go to Austin, I would have been in Austin, right? So really, they played a big role in my decision to move to Houston. But I've decided to stay. I could have moved, right? But I love the city because of the opportunity that it provides.
Absolutely. No, I can definitely relate to that. I mean, you can feel it here in the city, the mix of cultures, the industrious people want to get together and do stuff. And, I love the city as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And hey, guys, if you hear my daughter in the background, I apologize, but she's running around here somewhere.
Hey, that's no problem at all. I think we've heard a few different things on this pod. I think we've heard maybe a few dogs barking, maybe a few kids in the background. So that's a-okay.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm curious as well, maybe that for those of us who aren't familiar with Deloitte, could you explain, what type of company they are and what your role was for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So they are a international public accounting firm. So they provide audit service, tax, consulting, et cetera, right? A plethora of services. Um, Deloitte and PwC kind of go back and forth between being number one and being number two. Me being a Deloitte alumni, I'm always going to say Deloitte's number one, right? So it was definitely a big opportunity for me, coming from the background that I come from, to be able to work for a major accounting firm like Deloitte, especially fresh out of school. Typically the process is you work your way into getting an internship. After the internship, then you are either extended a full-time job offer, or they say, no, we're going in a different direction. But for me, they just gave me a full-time offer without the internship. So I was blessed and fortunate enough to have that opportunity. But yeah, man, Deloitte was a great experience. I did audit for them. So I started out in their audit department. I audited enterprise products, major company, major client here in the Houston area. So it was very challenging, but definitely a good time, man. Learned a lot.
Okay, absolutely. No, I can definitely see how a lot of those, a lot of maybe that discipline or a lot of those lessons you learned there can really translate to where you're at now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, 100%, man. Definitely learned a lot. You work a lot of hours when you work in the audit department, especially when you're auditing a major client like enterprise products. And it's kind of funny because I'm coming from the background that I come from, earned the bachelor's, got my master's degree, right? I'm working for this huge corporation and I'm thinking I've made it, right? But then I realized, oh man, I'm starting all over again. I'm at the bottom again. I need to work my way up. So yeah, it was kind of funny. Life always does that to you, right? Right when you think you've made it, you hit that next barrier and you have to just keep building.
Yeah, no, that's it's funny, right? No, it always kind of seems like maybe you have some sort of objective, maybe you accomplish it, and then you kind of look around and say, hey, what's next?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Definitely, so I'm curious as well, obviously, you have a great background, coming out of Lamar, doing, your degrees there, your schooling, getting this great background at Deloitte. Why the transition to where you're currently at now? Was there any particular aha moment that inspired you to transition?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was my daughter. My 9-year-old. She's 9 now, but at that time, her mom and I had split up, so became a single father. And I've had joint custody since the beginning. I never wanted to be one of those every other weekend dads. I wanted to be there as much as possible. So I really couldn't do that working in the accounting industry where I was at, working for someone else. I needed to own my time, right? So I jumped into the insurance industry without knowing anything about it, right? I'd never worked in sales, didn't really know much about my own home and auto policy, to be honest. I was going through the same process like most people, right? You're searching for a home, your realtor recommends a lender, your lender recommends an insurance policy just to get you pushed through the system, right? So I didn't have much experience. I mean, well, I shouldn't say much. I didn't have any experience in the insurance industry, but I knew that I had to own my time, right? In order for me to be able to be there for my daughter on a consistent basis, the way that I wanted to be. And as a business owner, you'll work yourself, more than the average employee, right? The business owner is always working twice as much and twice as hard, but you own your time, right? You're able to manage and set your schedule. So it gave me that freedom. And that's honestly what motivated me and pushed me into taking that step. I had a mentor back in Beaumont, and she was a farmer's insurance agent, has had our agency for years. And growing up there in Beaumont, being involved in the community, anytime that the organizations that I was involved with, that we needed to fundraise money for an event or whatever it is that we were doing, she was always there for us, right? So I reached out to her, sat down with her, and asked her, give me the good, the bad, the ugly about the industry. And she did, right? She was very honest with me, made an introduction to the district manager here in the Houston area. And there happened to be an agency available that was clientele was predominantly Spanish speaking. I happen to speak Spanish. I said, well, why not? Right. And the rest is history.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, it's not only I guess, a self-awareness and a test of courage, but also just asking people for help, right? You kind of recognizing, hey, who in the community is doing, doing what I want to do, or maybe, connecting and reaching out to people.
Absolutely. Oh, 100%. I mean, you have to, right? You have to understand that you can only go so far on your own, right? You have to be humble enough and lower that barrier, right? And then that guard, and go ask for help and ask for advice. Absolutely.
Sure, sure, absolutely. And I'm curious as well. I know that you mentioned how you do work insurance. Do you work mostly with policies in the Houston area or across the state of Texas or the country, or where is most of your clientele?
Yes, most of my clientele is here in Houston, between Houston and Beaumont, right? That's where the big concentration of my clientele. But I do have clients all over the state of Texas. I was fortunate enough to be a part of bringing a national Latino fraternity to Lamar University, first of its existence at the university. And once I joined that fraternity, of course, that created a massive network for myself and a lot of my fraternity brothers throughout the state of Texas are clients of mine, and they'll refer friends, family, coworkers. And so I've been able to also grow within the state. So anyone in the state of Texas, man, if you're willing to call us and give us an opportunity, we'll take it and we'll make sure, we get them taken care of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love to hear that. That's great. And especially, I'm sure it's nice, staying connected or maybe even reconnecting with some old friends too.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you mentioned how a lot of your clientele, Houston, all the way to Beaumont, kind of this general area. Could you explain maybe a bit of your products or maybe the services that you offer?
Sure, absolutely, 100%. So, um, home insurance, of course, right? That's number one. You own a home, you have to have it insured, right? There's no and ifs or buts about it. For most of us, our home is the largest investment that we own. It's the largest asset that we have. We have to make sure that it's properly insured. We like to go above and beyond and make sure that we explain every single layer and piece of coverage, especially when it comes to the details, right? Actual cash value versus replacement cost value. A lot of providers out there don't take the time to go into that detail, and clients or prospects don't understand the exposure that they have, right? In that situation, if they have an actual cash value versus a replacement cost value type policy. So home insurance, auto, right? Auto is pretty straightforward. Most carriers offer pretty much the same type of coverage, but what matters in the insurance industry is rates, right? And rates will always fluctuate. Um, as long as you have the right advisor in your corner, you will have the right type of coverage, right? But as insurance agents, what most people don't understand is that we can't control the rate, right? And I know you probably deal with this too. You'll get the phone call of, hey, this happened, that happened. And I always, sometimes I make the joke. I say, hey, man, we're not the satellite company. We're not Verizon. We're not Comcast. You can't just call us and get upset and expect a discount. We have millions of dollars on the line here. If you cause $100,000 accident, if that's your limits, we're going to cover it. So, auto insurance, life, right? Coming from the community that I come from, life insurance isn't a big part of our culture, and that has to change, right? And one of the reasons it's not a big part of our culture is my parents immigrated from a country where life insurance is not taught. It's not a major factor, right? Especially if you're lower income, right? So, and there's a lack of information, right? There's a lack of information within our community, and the only way that we change that is to inform and to educate, to properly educate and make sure that we properly insure that client, right? When it comes to life insurance, I would never allow my team to sell someone a policy that they cannot afford, right? Because what's the point, right? If we process and push through $1 million policy, but it's costing this client $100 and their budget is 80, it's only going to stick around for a couple of months and then it's gone. Well, we did a disservice to that client in that situation, right? So we have to make sure that we focus on working with the client and their budget. Again, I grew up with 8 brothers and sisters, right? If I know more about budgeting than anyone else, right? Because I had no choice. 8 years old, sitting there trying to negotiate with the bill electricity company, for mom and dad, since they didn't really speak English. But so life insurance is a big factor. We do commercial, right? We write all sorts of commercial. If Farmers doesn't have the appetite for it, then we do have access to brokers outside of Farmers that we can write that commercial policy with. We have clients that are attorneys, doctors, different type of contractors, whether they do tiling, plumbing, electricity. We have a major oil and gas client as well. So pretty much anything in the insurance industry that you need, we can insure. The only thing that I do not touch is health insurance. I do not touch it. I've never really taken the time. Hate our healthcare system. So I honestly don't want to deal with it. So I've never touched it. I've stayed away from health insurance.
Yeah, no, I can definitely relate to that. Maybe not, going off too much of on a tangent, but what exactly, what exactly do you think is difficult about, dealing with health insurance?
Honestly, I don't, you know, if you're going to, as an agent, if you're going to sell and focus on health insurance, you should target business owners, right? You should target the businesses, right? And try to write a policy for the entire company. Because when you're working with one-on-one individuals, I mean, it's just so expensive, right?
Mm.
And so difficult that it breaks my heart to have that conversation, right? Uh, our healthcare system is broken. It's a fact, right? Um, don't want to get too political on this podcast, but 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 it's a reality, right? Our healthcare system is broken. It's an issue. We really need some healthcare reform. So I just don't have the heart to have those conversations, especially if someone is dealing with a certain illness or a certain medication that they need access to. Um, I just again, I don't have the heart for it. There's nothing I can do. My hands are completely tied. You know, and again, the cost is just outrageous for most families.
Yeah, no, that's definitely definitely true. There's a lot of truth to that. Obviously, in the country we have a lot of issues with healthcare, and but no, I appreciate that perspective there. And I'm curious as well, just the type of I guess really what are sort of some misconceptions that you maybe had prior to getting into this industry? You kind of get your feet wet, you get in, you realize, wow, maybe things are a bit different than what I thought.
Yeah, I was one of those people, right, that thought if I just picked up the phone and called and sounded a little upset, I'd get a discount. Because I didn't really understand it, right? I didn't understand the industry. I didn't understand the loss ratios. I didn't understand what the carriers have to make sure they manage, right, in order to continue to turn a profit, right? Insurance industry, every carrier is still a business, right? They have to turn a profit, right? They're not the government, they have to make sure they turn a profit. So you look at certain carriers like Vera and these other carriers that have pulled out of the state of Texas because Texas was no longer profitable for them, right? They didn't want to risk going through another hurricane season, right? We're in the middle of hurricane season right now. So, I didn't understand a lot of those factors. And I didn't really understand also just the industry as a whole, being an agent, the captive, independent, the hybrids that exist now. I didn't understand that as well, but it's been fun, man. It's been a really interesting couple of years, and definitely look forward to seeing continuing to see how the industry evolves because it's evolving more and more every year.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm curious. I guess given that this is a real estate YouTube channel, right? The auto stuff is pretty cut and dry, right? You can kind of adjust the policies for whichever policy limits you're comfortable with. But maybe for someone who is looking to buy a home for the first time and they're interested in learning more about insurance, they know insurance is part of the process. I have this lender, I have this agent. Now I need insurance. Where does someone even start in terms of educating themselves properly on insurance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, thank God we have something called Google nowadays, right? It's very easy to Google information, but I always warn people of the link they click and what they find, right? There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of clickbait out there as well. The number one thing you want to do is make sure you find the right agent, right? Find the agent that is willing to take their time to not just answer your questions, but walk you through the process, right? And one that will set the expectation and communicate and walk you through the entire process of not just the quote, but hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how it works. I'll follow up with you at this point in time. And this is the coverage that you need, right? There's a huge misconception also. I get this question a lot. Well, why is my dwelling coverage 300,000 if my home is only worth 250,000, right? Well, yeah, that's the market value of your home, right? But the reconstruction value of your home is completely different, right? And that will always change because cost of labor will go up, cost of materials will go up. As we saw over the last year, lumber was up, right? And then it's kind of been up and down a little bit over the last couple of months, but it increased drastically, right? About a year ago. And so, you have to make sure you have the right agent that will walk you through that and explain that to you, right? So that you make sure that you are getting the right policy, that you're not being sold a stripped down policy that yes, gives you, some coverage, but not enough to rebuild your home in case there is a fire in the home, right? Um, you have to be aware of that, right? You have to make sure that you find the right agent that again will walk you through, and make sure you have a decent deductible, right? A lot of people don't pay attention to that. The higher the deductible, the lower the premium, right? Make sure that you're not extremely focused on the yearly premium, right? Because that is not the end all be all, especially for us where we live. We're highly susceptible to hurricanes. The minute a hurricane or a named storm, blows through, and if you're not aware, you have a 5% deductible, you could be in trouble, right? You could be in trouble. You might not even have the cash on hand to cover that deductible. Nonetheless, then being able to pay out of pocket for any other expenses, right? So you have to make sure you have the right agent that's taking the time to walk you through the entire policy. We tend to be very price driven, and you have to be aware of that. Yes, it's good to have that budget in mind, but you have to make sure that you are properly insured, that you don't have extremely high deductibles. It's unfortunate, but I've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it, right? You have a lot of agents out there or producers that will write a huge high deductible just so they can sell the policy because they're trying to sell that price point, right? Well, hey, look, I'm saving you $400 a year. You are, but you also give them a 5% deductible. You're setting them up for failure. That's a problem, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. And, I can't help but smile because what you just said reminds me of my grandpa, amongst the many lessons that he taught me, throughout my life, one of them will always stick with me. And, it sounds cliche, but as I got older, it's so true. And he always told me, Aaron, you get what you pay for.
Right.
Right.
That's
So,
right.
I guess everyone can be guilty of it. I'm guilty of it as well. Kind of that, maybe at times you have that sticker shock or wondering why your premium's going up or something like that. But, if anything, it's about finding someone who's going to, like you said, break it down, explain it to you, and basically tailor make a policy that works for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. We have to be able to work within your budget. And I've told clients, right? I have clients that will tell me, hey, well, I get it. Thank you for explaining it to me, but I don't want to pay that much. I said, well, hey, that's your decision, right? I can't force you into something. That's your decision, but my duty has been fulfilled. My responsibility to you is to inform you. You're well informed. You understand what you're buying, right? When that claim comes around and they call and they're upset, I'm like, hey, we talked about it. You chose to make that decision. You have to lie in the bed that you make. That's just how it works. But yeah, people don't also notice or not notice, realize that now it's becoming more and more common that insurance carriers will put in place a moratorium, right? Hurricane is in the Gulf, it's coming. Insurance carriers will start to shut down. You can't make changes, you can't buy new policies, you can't even decrease your deductible. So, don't run that risk, right? And again, you have to make sure you have the right agent on your side that won't allow you to put yourself in that position, because we all get busy, right? You've got children, you have a family, work. I mean, you're not thinking about your insurance policy on a random Tuesday and when there's a storm coming. So let's make sure we avoid that situation.
Yeah, no, ain't that the truth? That's so true. And that's an excellent point to bring up about the moratoriums, right? If there's a hurricane in the Gulf and you're 24 hours away from the storm, come rolling in, a lot of times you can't make those changes.
Right. That's right. That's right. So no more you trying to drive your car into the water,
I love it. That's funny. But and I'm curious as well. I know that you're probably accustomed to being in this sort of environment, growing up in Beaumont. You're right by the water.
Yes.
I can name probably a number of storms that have rolled through that area, at least since I've been alive. Could you kind of talk a bit about how flood insurance works, here in the state of Texas and in particular in the Houston area?
Yeah, 100%, man. And I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because the biggest misconception or another and I keep saying that word, but there's just a lot of misinformation, a lot of lack of knowledge out there. But a huge misconception is that your home insurance covers flood insurance, right?
Mm.
No, it's completely separate, two separate policies. If you go through FEMA, National Flood Processing Center, then you're going to have to pay it all up front, right? 100%. You're 30 days out. If you bind today, it's not effective for another 30 days unless you're closing on a home, right? Unless you're closing, then it can be effective today. Um, you have to make sure that you have the right coverages there as well, right? The great thing about flood insurance, those deductibles are manageable for the most part. You have to make sure that you're maintaining the right coverage for your home and your contents, right? A lot of people don't think about that, right? You have to make sure your contents are fully covered because furniture is expensive. Furniture is expensive, and it's for a long time after I bought my house, I didn't have any furniture in my home because it's so expensive. There's a big echo in my house for a long time, but you have to make sure your contents are covered. You have to make sure your flood insurance is in place. This argument of I'm not in a flood zone, I'll never flood doesn't exist to me anymore. I train all of my staff and I train our clientele right to understand that it's not a matter of will I flood, it's a matter of when will I flood, right? Because again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, one of the reasons I love Houston is because of the opportunity, right? People continue to move into the city, a lot of construction happening left and right. So that creates opportunities for other neighborhoods to start flooding that didn't flood before. Literally, I bought my home in 2015, right? Here in Katy. My home is built at a higher elevation. My immediate neighborhood did not flood, but you drive out 2-3 streets down, everyone in those neighborhoods flooded. Well, those homes were built earlier in the 80s, in the 90s, early 2000s, right? They're built at a lower elevation. I'm not an engineer by any means, but some of these things are a little bit noticeable, right? So you have to make sure that you make that investment, that you invest in that flood insurance. Do not allow yourself to be a type of person that leaves your family out in the rain, because it has happened. I've seen it over and over again. Now, there are a lot of private carriers as well that you can work through that can give you better rates, especially if you're in a high risk flood zone. You do have that opportunity to quote with independent carriers that will give you better coverage, right? But again, I'll go back to it, man. Flood insurance is completely separate than your home insurance. Make sure that you at least take the time to ask about flood insurance. And if your agent is not asking you, then shame on them, right? Then that means it's time to find another agent. Call Aaron, call me, call someone, the person that you're dealing with, if they're not having that conversation with you. Because again, we live in an area where we're extremely susceptible to flooding. I mean, we've had a tax day flood, right? We've had a little rainstorm that comes by that we didn't expect to cause much damage, and then next thing you know, our streets are flooded, right? So our businesses are flooded, right? Make sure that if you own a business, your business is insured for flood insurance, right? Something we don't think about as business owners. If we have a retail space, we don't think about it. Make sure your inventory is covered, right? So make sure that you're fully protected there, because again, your BOP, your business owner policy, is not going to cover that flood. You have to make sure you take that extra step. And it's worth it, man. Again, I always tell people, back when flood insurance was $450, right? When I first started for a low risk area, $450, I say, hey, well, look, if you don't flood in 4 years, in 10 years, you've invested $4,500, right? But if you flood at year 11, you're going to need a heck of a lot more than $4,500 to rebuild your home and replace your contents. The math works, the math works. It makes sense to make that investment.
Yeah, no, ain't that the truth? And thank you, Luis, there for providing some great insight on flood insurance, because at least maybe for someone who they're buying a home for the first time, they're just moving down here to Texas, there can be a few misconceptions on, am I covered with this or with that? Flood separate, the whole thing, right?
Absolutely, especially if you're moving from somewhere in the country that you're not used to dealing with floods, right? If you're not used to flooding, it's not something you ever think about. But if you're coming here, it's a conversation you need to have.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Luis. And, is there anything that you really haven't said thus far that you really just like to hit home for us?
Something that, I don't know, man, I talk a lot. Who knows? I have to go back and listen to see what I did and didn't say. But no, man, again, personal lines is very straightforward. I think what matters the most is to make sure that you have the right agent in your corner. You have to make sure you have someone that's willing to go to bat for you, right? That's willing to take the time to sit there and have that conversation with you and walk you through your coverages. And don't take it lightly, right? Again, life is a little hectic at this time. And it's easy to just kind of brush it off and say, oh, well, I've got the cheapest, let's just move forward. No. Take the time to sit there, have that conversation with your agent, make sure you do have the right person in your corner. You don't want to walk out there in the middle of a storm and be left out. So yeah, man, you have to make sure you have the right person in your corner.
Yep. No, ain't that the truth? That's so true. I mean, and you brought up an excellent point about, hey, we have Google at our fingertips, but it can only help you to a point, right? Because maybe the information's old, it's not pertinent to that particular region or situation. So it's definitely good to connect with, with professionals like yourself.
Absolutely. And automation is great, right? And where we are, where we've advanced IT wise is amazing, but it is very easy now, right? To just Google auto insurance near me, home insurance near me. You can go to some random website, type in your information, get a quote, process it, bind it, and you're doing this while enjoying a cold beer, watching a movie on your couch on a Tuesday. That's great. But again, do you really know what you're buying, right? So it is worth taking that extra step, and picking up the phone and speaking to an actual local representative that understands the area, right? You don't want to be dealing with someone in California or I don't know, some other state that just doesn't understand our area, doesn't understand what we're dealing with, right? So make sure you stay local and you have the right person in your corner.
Yep. That's definitely true. And it's, I was talking to somebody last year and they told me something that really stuck with me. And they said, the future is local, right?
Yeah.
Just having that local expertise of people who are familiar with, how it goes in your area.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, definitely, Luis. So maybe someone, they're watching, they're listening right now to you. They're here in the Houston area near Beaumont, other part of Texas, or maybe they just want to talk to you about some insurance and real estate. Where can we find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Call our office. Easiest way to get a hold of us, 832-559-3849. Send us an email, look me up, right? Luis Lopez, Farmers Insurance, you'll find me. And we're always available, right? We're always available. We're always working. I'm always working. So if I don't have staff available, I'm always there too. And we've got a pretty good team, a pretty well experienced team as well. And yeah, we're very, very easy to find. Like I mentioned, my office is in Katy, but we service the entire state of Texas. Anyone in the state that needs some help, we can definitely get you taken care of. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram. I think I told you before, Aaron, I'm not a big fan of social media, but I have to understand that the world is, right? The rest of the world, that's where they live. So we're there. You can easily find us and have access to us.
Yep. No, I can definitely relate to that. Well, Luis, I've learned a heck of a lot about you, a bit about, your background coming into, this part of the industry, into insurance from accounting and Deloitte, a few of the lessons that you've learned and, some great insight about insurance, right? Whether you're a first-time home buyer or someone who just wants to know more about insurance. So I enjoyed our convo and thank you again for coming on the show.
Absolutely, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. I was really excited, man, to have the opportunity to just come on here, speak with you, speak with your audience, share some knowledge. And yeah, man, I'm always available. I'm always available.
All right. Sure thing. Thanks, Luis. We'll talk to you later.
Perfect, man. Thank you.